Guys, we're here to talk about cost behaviors. Now, there are a lot of costing techniques, but one fundamental thing that you'll need to understand is cost behaviors. Costs usually behave in three ways, which is they behave as a fixed cost, they behave as a variable cost, or they behave as a semi-variable cost. Now, as an exercise, I will obviously explain fixed and variable costs to you first, and then I have some items noted down. So with me, if you're able to, sort these into one of these three buckets, whether it is variable, fixed, or semi-variable, you are probably through with this concept. And once you're through with this concept, believe me, you can solve most costing questions if you know how costs behave or operate, right? So to explain fixed and variable costs to you, let us look at it this way. Let us assume that you're manufacturing pens. Now, in order to manufacture pens, you will obviously incur certain costs. They could either be fixed or variable in nature, or some of them could be semi-variable. Variable costs are usually those that increase with the output. So if you produce one, you incur a certain amount for that. But if you incur 100, you obviously incur more on an incremental basis. Whereas fixed costs, whether you make one or you make 100 or whatever is in your relevant range, the cost in total for you does not change. With that being said, let's now look at the more enjoyable part of this video, which is a bunch of different line items, and we'll try to split them into these three buckets. To make this example a little more fun, let me come up with a company for y'all that y'all will be able to relate to. And then let us assume one by one, if you were the owner of this company, where would you put this cost and why would you do that? Guys, let's assume that you own Starbucks, right? You'll have materials that you're buying, of course, which might be in the form of coffee powder or different ingredients into your coffee. You will have labor. You will have a bunch of different costs. So let's go over them one by one. Just remember you're the owner of Starbucks for the next 5 minutes. So the very first cost that we want to talk about is direct material. Now, direct material can basically be described as anything that facilitates the original or the manufacturing process in the factory. Why do I say in the factory? Well, you could have material that facilitates production outside your factory in your office, but then that also counts as indirect material. Here we're talking about direct material. As Starbucks, your primary product is coffee. And given that your primary product is coffee, let's say you produce coffee powder, which counts as direct material. This for you would count as a variable cost. And the reason is, with more coffees that you produce, you will obviously incur more and more direct material costs. The second cost that I want to talk about is direct labor. Now, again, direct labor is anyone who turns or plays a part in turning your direct material into the finished output, which in this case is coffee. Now, again, think about it. As your output increases, you will need to incur more and more labor costs as the owner of Starbucks to turn this into finished product, which is why direct labor also goes down as a variable cost. The third thing that we want to look at is indirect labor. So let's say that employ accountants at Starbucks. Obviously, someone needs to account for their profits or revenues. You have an accountant in place. What do you think this counts as? Well, if you said variable, you're wrong. If you said fixed, depending on the situation, you could be right. But usually we classify this as a semi-variable cost if we are not sure. Other times, of course, it can go down as a fixed cost as well. Okay, let's talk about factory production supplies. What do you think this will go down as? This one I'm not going to discuss, leave it in the comments below. Next one is depreciation. Now, imagine as the owner of Starbucks, you have so many machines that help you turn your direct material into output. What do you think the depreciation cost goes down as? In my opinion, it should go down as fixed costs because given the different methods of depreciating, that cost does not change depending on your output. Now, let's talk about electricity. Very interesting. Electricity usually goes down as a semi-variable cost, and the reason for electricity going down as a semi-variable cost is because a certain part of the cost is always fixed. Regardless of how many units of electricity you consume, certain parts of it are always fixed, others are variable. So it usually goes down as a semi-variable cost. Okay, the final bit I want to talk about is rent. Rent will always be a fixed cost. The landlord from whom you're renting this place out does not care how much coffee you produce. So that will always be a fixed cost for you. And with that being said, if you've understood logically how these work, you'll find plenty of questions on the internet to solve. I want you all to spend some time solving the questions and it will clear this concept out for you. Thanks for watching.